couple weeks ago, I was on a hike, and if you guys hear me talk a lot, you know that I like to go on hikes. And I was on this hike up in the Laurel Mountains, and along the hike, I got to a place where there was a really, really huge rock formation. I don't know how many of you have ever really spent times up in the Laurel Highlands, but it's a little bit different once you get up into the mountains because there are these huge, enormous rocks. I don't know what they are. If they're limestone, I have no clue. Rob, do you know? Yeah, I feel like Rob knows. I don't know why, I just feel like out of everyone here, Rob knows what kind of rocks they are, right? They're probably limestone. But they're these massive, massive boulders, enormous, the size of a semi-truck. They're just sort of in the middle of the mountain, and they pop out everywhere. But this one particular rock formation was, I think, the largest one I've ever seen up there, because I wanna say that it was probably 4 or 5 stories tall. It was huge, it was enormous. And it was sort of at the top of one of the peaks. And so I got up there, and it was really cool, and I climbed up to the top of the rock formation, because that's what they're there for, to climb on, right? Any good boy will tell you, if you see that, you have to climb on it. So I went up there, and what was so amazing to me at the top of that rock formation is that there were 4 or 5 trees that were growing on the top of the rock formation. And this is weird, because that is a very hostile environment for a tree to grow. Because we all know basic nature principles, right? Trees have roots that go down into the soil, and that's how they access water and nutrients in order for them to grow. Also, the strength of the tree is determined by the depth of the roots. And so these are kind of universal principles about how trees work, but yet on the top of this rock formation, there were 4 or 5 trees that were growing, and they weren't little saplings. They had been there for a long time. They were pretty hefty trees, not the biggest trees, but they were pretty strong trees. And I'm looking how in the world is it possible for these trees to be growing on a rock? This doesn't make sense. But when you look, they had these roots that had sort of twisted around the rock formation and kind of found their way back into these little crevices where there must have been some soil or some dampness that gave them, the water and the nutrients that they needed to grow. And I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, it doesn't make sense that a tree could grow in this type of hostile environment. But when I was thinking about it, I felt like God was showing me something even about my own life. And what I think he was showing me is that God is able to make healthy things grow even in harsh conditions. That God can make healthy things grow even in harsh conditions. And the truth is that God's desire for your life is that you would be healthy. That you'd be healthy. But a lot of times we equate our health with our current circumstances. And don't get me wrong, your circumstances definitely have an impact on who you are and the kind of life that you live. But yet the promise of God, and we can put this up on the screen, is that God is able to make healthy things grow even in harsh conditions. That even though you're in a harsh environment, you can still be healthy. And that's a great promise, and it's encouraging as well. I don't know what your circumstances are. We're thanking God for 2021. But I know that everyone watching or listening right now has things in their life where they're still not thankful for it yet. I still have things I want to change. I still have things I want to see. I still have things that I'm hoping for. And when you look at your circumstances, there are still things in your life that you're this needs to change. But what the damaging choice we can make is to say, I'm not gonna be healthy until my circumstances change. I'm not gonna be strong until my circumstances change. And we look at our environment, and here's what we tend to do as human beings. We tend to blame our health on our circumstances. And I'm not saying that circumstances don't need to change. They do. But what I'm telling you is that health doesn't begin with the external, health begins with the internal. Health doesn't begin because you've gotten your circumstances to the place where you want them. Health begins because your soul has gotten to a place where God wants it to be. And health begins in here. It doesn't begin out there. And what I've learned is that I am really, 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 really good at blaming my dysfunction on things that I can't change. Because if I can blame my dysfunction on things that I can't change, then I don't have to take responsibility to change myself. And we live there. Human beings are great at excuses. We are great at the blame game. We are great at making everyone else responsible for what's going on in my life. But yet God's promise is he is able to make healthy things grow even in harsh conditions. with the promise behind that is amazing. It's like you can be healthy, praise God. But the challenge behind it is not so amazing. Because if that's true, it means that you and I can't make excuses. If it's true, you and I have to get rid of the blame game. And so my challenge is going into 2022, it's a no excuses year. I'm not gonna blame everyone else for something going on in my soul. I'm not gonna blame everyone else for something going on in my mind. I'm not gonna blame everyone else for the things that I don't like about what I am and who I am. But you've got to make a shift to say, I'm not gonna be in love with my excuses anymore. But can I be honest with you? I love making excuses. I love making excuses because I like being the victim. Because I don't wanna have to take personal responsibility for what's going on in my life. I don't want to, because if it's someone else's fault, then I can just sit back and chill and not have to deal with it. Except I am making an agreement to stay in a cycle of dysfunction by doing that. But as long as it's not your fault, then you can just stay in the dysfunction and just be mad at the whole world the whole time. And you know what? That's where the majority of human beings live their entire life. It's everyone else's fault, and I'm a victim, and I'm gonna tell you why all my problems are everyone else's faults. And so if the government can fix it, or if society can fix it, or if my mama can fix it, or if my boss can fix it, then I'll have a good life. But until those things happen, I have an excuse to stay dysfunctional. I have an excuse to stay unhealthy. And I love making excuses. I don't wanna get out of bed today. Let me find easily 5 people to blame for the fact that I don't wanna get out of bed today. I could come up with those 5 people so fast. My mom made me eat too many Christmas cookies on Christmas, so I don't feel like getting out of bed. My kids kept me up too late. My kids got me up too early on Christmas morning. I mean, I could go down a list. AJ got this new subscription on Netflix, and now I can't turn it off. That's not true. We've had it for a long time. But, I can blame her for it. I stayed up all night watching TV, and I don't want to get out of bed this morning. It's her fault. She put the show on. We are so good at making excuses. It's everyone else's fault. Why didn't you want to get out of bed today? I got all kinds of reasons why I didn't get out of bed today, but none of them were my fault. And as long as I am in love with my excuses, I will stay in dysfunction. And as long as I am in love with excuses, I will stay unhealthy. Because health doesn't start out there. Health starts in here. So we can't let our difficult circumstances be an excuse for our unhealthiness. I mean, you can. I said you can't let difficult circumstances, I mean, that's not really true. You can let difficult circumstances be an excuse for unhealthiness, but if you do choose to go that route, guess what's gonna happen? You're gonna stay unhealthy. If you actually wanna get healthy, then you can't let difficult circumstances be an excuse for your unhealthiness. Let's go to the word. Revelation. Revelation talks about heaven, and it talks about God making everything right and God making everything new again. And in Revelation 22, there's this beautiful picture of the throne room. And it says this in verse 1, an angel showed me the river of the water of life. And it was clear as crystal, and it was flowing from the throne of God and of the Lamb down the middle of the great street of the city. On each side of the river stood the tree of life, bearing 12 crops of fruit, yielding its fruit every month. So that's not normal. Fruit yields crops in a season. Trees, I didn't say that right. Fruit trees yield crops in a specific season. But I don't think there's any tree on earth that yields crops in every month. Right, so what the point is that there's a supernatural level of health. Are you telling me that I'm wrong? Oh, he's like shaking his head. Just maybe you should come up and do the nature portion of the talk today. I love you, Rob, so much. All right, anyway, the point is, I don't really know much about nature, but I'm talking about it. The point is that these trees produce fruit in every single month. But that's not normal, that's not natural. So this is speaking to a level of healthiness that is not natural. Fruitfulness is a product of healthiness. If a tree is sick, it doesn't produce fruit. If your life is sick, if your soul is sick, it won't produce much fruit. Or the fruit that it will produce will be corrupted, right? And so if the tree is healthy, you'll produce healthy fruit. If the soul is healthy, you'll produce healthy fruit. And so what it's saying is it's giving us this image of the throne of God with this huge river coming out of the throne. And all along the river is this tree that has this supernatural degree of healthiness because it has a supernatural degree of fruitfulness. And it says the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nations. And so in other words, the intent of the river is that it would be distributed to all people. That the life that's coming out of the river would somehow affect all nations. And when you see a phrase in the scriptures like all nations, what it refers to is it refers to the great diversity of the human race. So the idea here is that this river of life, which produces healthy things, which then produce healthy fruit, is not exclusively available to certain people. It says that this river of life, which produces healthy things, which then produce fruitful things, is available to everybody. Which means that you can't make an excuse for why the river of life doesn't touch your life. Because the river of life is available to everyone, all nations. So what does Jesus say? Well, he uses a very similar imagery. In John chapter 7, Jesus says, "Let anyone who is thirsty come to me and drink." So he's saying if you have a need for life-giving water, that's okay. We all have a need for life-giving water. And so it's not like a condemnation message of, why aren't you fruitful? No, the message of Jesus is if you need some health, if you need some life, if you need a drink, if you need to be fruitful, come to me and I'll give it to you. Right? So it's all inclusive. Come to me and I'll give it to you. But listen to what he says. Anyone who is thirsty, let them come to me and drink. And then he says, here's how you come to me and drink. You believe. You believe. You believe. Why is the key to receiving the life-giving water your belief? Oh, because my excuses are beliefs. And in order to receive what God's sending me, I have to have a new set of beliefs. I believe that I'm a victim versus I believe that I'm a child of God being given promises from heaven. See the difference between the belief? I can't access it as long as I'm loyal to my excuses. Put that verse back up. He says, if you believe in me, as scripture has said, rivers of living water will, now it's a different orientation, right? Because in Revelation, the river is flowing from God to the nations. But now in John, Jesus ups it and he says, actually, when you put your faith in me, not only does the river flow from the throne to the nations, but now the river flows from within your soul and out of you. Now that's awesome. But did you also notice how Jesus says, if you're thirsty, come to me and drink, and then rivers of living water will flow from within you. So one drink of Jesus turns into a river of life flowing out of you. Amazing how God can turn one sip into a rushing river. But this is the promise of God, that if you would access what God's giving you, then life is gonna start flowing from you. How do I get access to it? I believe. I believe. If you believe in me, rivers of living water will come flowing from within you. But in order to believe, I have to divorce my excuses. I have to take them out on a date. I have to sit them down and I have to say, you suck and you're not in my life anymore. I gotta fall out of love with my excuses. That's hard though, because I really love my excuses. But here's a different belief. Here's a different belief. Wherever you are, in whatever circumstances you find yourself in, there's a river running to that place. You could be trying to build a house, trying to build a tree on the top of a rock formation. Say, there's no water that comes up to this place. It's not even in the soil. But God says, oh, but if you believe in me, a river runs to that place. A river runs to your home. A river runs to your job. A river runs to your soul. A river runs to your mind. A river runs to your school. There's a river that's running to wherever you are, because the river from the throne of God is going out into the nations. And if you would believe in Jesus, that river will now live inside of you and flow out of you. So I need you to turn to the person that you're with right now and say, a river runs through this place. A river runs through this place. Which then, if the river of God is running to wherever I am, it means the supply of God, the love of God, the grace of God, the goodness of God is flowing to wherever I am, which then means I don't have any excuses anymore. Because if a river runs to this place, it means I can be healthy in this place. But the river, it doesn't come from my circumstances, it comes from heaven, which is not of this earth. The river doesn't come from your mom and your dad. The river doesn't come from your boss or your paycheck. The river doesn't come from the city that you live in or the college that you're in or the degrees that you have. The river doesn't come from the world. The river comes from the throne, which means that wherever I find myself circumstantially today, a river runs to this place, which means I can be healthy in this place. A river runs to this place, I can be healthy in this place. Another word for health, the ultimate plan of God is that you would be whole. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only son, that whoever believes in him would not perish but have life, everlasting life. His plan is to make you whole. So if a river runs to this place, I can be healthy in this place, which means I can be whole in this place. I can be the son I was made to be in this place. I can be the daughter I was made to be in this place. And now, there might be some circumstances that you need to change. But normally what we screw up is the belief that if I change my circumstances, it will change me. But what I want you to do instead is to come to God and say, God, change me. And then I'll know how to change my circumstances. Because if I change all of this stuff, it might not be from a whole place or a healthy place. It might be from a defensive place. It might be from a sick place. And sick trees don't make healthy fruit. I don't want to eat my apple off a tree that has worms in it, right? So I need God to make me whole, to make me healthy here, and then I'll have discernment and understanding about how to change the things out there. But if I try to change the things out there without changing the things in here, all I'm doing is rearranging the furniture on the Titanic. And I might feel good about myself, but it didn't actually change the core problem. But a river runs to this place. So I can be healthy in this place. So I can be whole in this place, but I gotta break up with my excuses. Worship team, you all can come on up. Psalm 23, many of you know this. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Where's he take me? Green pastures. And where's he lead me? Still waters. Where's he leading me? To the banks of the river. Taking that drink that turns into that river. He restores my soul. I don't know, maybe Christmas was really hard for you. Good thing you're watching today, because God caused you to tune in because he wants to restore your soul. He leads me in the right paths for his name's sake, but then takes a weird twist. I'm cool with this psalm. I wanna be on the banks of the still water. I wanna lay down in the green pasture. I wanna chill in all of those places. But then David says, but even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I'm not afraid. Why? Because a river runs to that place. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. And then, and this is my favorite verse in the whole psalm, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. It's like I might have enemies after me on all sides. I might have people trying to discredit me, trying to talk me out of doing what God wants me to do. I might have enemies in my marriage, enemies in my physical health, enemies in my emotional health. I might be surrounded on all sides by things that are trying to take me out. But a river even runs to that place, because in that place, I'm not on the battlefield. I'm sitting in my tent and I got a freaking feast in front of me. I got all the dishes, all the sides, all the mains, and all the desserts. And I'm sitting there and I'm chilling, even when I'm surrounded by enemies, because my circumstances don't determine my health. Because the goodness of God is what determines my health. The purposes of God is what determines my health. The love of God is what determines my health, because a river runs to this place. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and then here's the key. And my cup runs over. Oh, I didn't just have enough for me. I had enough that it was spilling out of me onto everyone else I touched. Because when God restores you, He takes you to a place called abundance. And if 2021 was the year of restoration, it means that 2022, you ready for it? Is the year of abundance. Because a river runs to this place. Come on. Health runs to this place. His love runs to this place. So I'm gonna be healthy in this place. I'm gonna be whole in this place. Come on, let's stand on our feet and let's worship our God. Because no matter where we find ourselves today, we can break up with our excuses and we can be healthy, because God makes healthy things grow even in harsh conditions. So right now, as we're about to sing and worship, what I want you to do is actually turn your attention to the goodness of God and say, all right, God, I need a drink of water. I'm coming in for that sip, and I'm gonna let that sip turn into a big river flowing out of me. All right, come on, let's worship our God. I'm so glad that you tuned in today. Listen, God has an incredible, incredible story ahead for you, marked with His love and His goodness. Listen, why don't you go ahead and like the video? It helps other people see the video, and I believe that there's a message here that can help a lot of people. Also, subscribe to the channel so that you always see what's coming up here. And listen, we'd love for you to be a part of the Amplify family. Every single Sunday at 10, 1, and 6 Eastern Time, you can join us live on YouTube at the Amplify Church YouTube page to be a part of the Amplify family every Sunday. And if you'd like to be a part of what God's doing through Amplify, you can give at amplifychurch.com/give. I love you so much, and I am so glad that you are with me, and I believe that God has incredible things in store for you. See you soon.